Margaret Anderson had spent 43 years building what she thought was an unshakable life. At 67, with silver-streaked curls framing her warm brown face, she'd raised 3 children, buried her parents, and stood beside her husband Robert through decades of marriage. She worked as a hospice nurse, bringing comfort to families in their darkest hours. Her hands, weathered but gentle, had held countless others through their final journeys. That Tuesday started like any other. She'd been at Memorial Hospital for a routine checkup. Nothing serious, just the kind of thing you do when you reach a certain age. Robert had promised to pick her up at 3 o'clock. She waited on the bench outside, watching clouds drift across the autumn sky. 3:15 came and went. Then 3:30. No answer on his cell phone. Margaret called their son, Daniel. "Sweetheart, your father seems to have forgotten about me. Could you possibly come get me?" Daniel's voice carried concern. "Mom, that's not like Dad. Let me try reaching him, but I can't leave work right now. Why don't you take a cab home? I'll swing by tonight to check on both of you." So Margaret did something she rarely did. She called a car service, charged it to their joint credit card, and rode home in silence, worry gnawing at her chest. The house looked peaceful when she arrived. Robert's car sat in the driveway. Relief washed through her, followed quickly by confusion, then something else. Something cold. She tried her key. It didn't work. Margaret stood on her own front porch, key in hand, staring at the lock that had opened to her touch for 38 years. She tried again, thinking perhaps she'd done something wrong. Nothing. The deadbolt had been changed. Her heart began to pound, not with fear, but with a terrible, dawning understanding. She walked around to the back door. Also changed. Through the kitchen window, she could see Robert sitting at their table, reading the newspaper, drinking coffee from the mug she'd given him last Christmas. Margaret knocked. Firmly, deliberately, Robert's head jerked up. For a moment, their eyes met through the glass. What she saw in his face wasn't surprise. It was guilt, mixed with something harder. Determination. He came to the door but didn't open it. "Robert," she said, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. "What's going on?" "Margaret," he cleared his throat. "I was going to call you. This isn't. Look, I've made some decisions about my life, about our life. Open this door. I can't do this anymore," he said through the glass. "I'm 69 years old, and I don't want to spend whatever time I have left in a marriage that feels like an obligation." The words hung in the air between them, separated by a pane of glass and 38 years of shared history. "An obligation," Margaret repeated softly. "Is that what I've been to you?" "I've met someone," Robert continued, looking away. "Her name is Diane. She's 52. She makes me feel alive again, Margaret. She makes me feel young." Margaret felt something crack inside her chest, but her voice remained calm. "So you changed the locks while I was at the hospital. My lawyer said it was the cleanest way. You'll get papers soon. I've been generous with the settlement." Generous. The word tasted bitter. "I'm sorry it had to be like this," Robert said, and had the audacity to look uncomfortable. "But I need to start my new life. Diane's moving in tomorrow." Margaret stood very still. Around her, the neighborhood carried on, oblivious. Mrs. Chun watered her roses next door. A delivery truck rumbled past. Somewhere, a dog barked. The world kept turning, indifferent to the moment when Margaret's entire life shifted on its axis. "I see," she said finally. "May I at least get some of my clothes? My medications?" Robert shook his head. "My lawyer advised against it. Everything's being inventoried. You'll get your belongings once the paperwork is finalized. You can stay at a hotel. Use the credit card. The credit card you'll probably cancel." His silence was answer enough. Margaret nodded slowly. She looked at this man she'd slept beside for nearly 4 decades, had borne children with, had nursed through pneumonia and a heart scare 5 years ago. She'd held his hand through his mother's funeral. She'd celebrated every promotion, every milestone. She'd been faithful, devoted, present, and he'd changed the locks. "All right, Robert," she said quietly. "All right." She turned and walked away, her steps measured and calm. She didn't look back. She didn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her cry. But Margaret Anderson was not broken. Not yet. Not ever. Because as she walked down the driveway, something else began to grow in the space where her heart had cracked open. Not hatred, exactly. Something more deliberate, more patient. Margaret had spent her entire career helping people through transitions. She understood timing. She understood leverage. She understood that sometimes the quietest people carry the sharpest understanding of how the world really works. Robert had made his choice. Now Margaret would make hers, And oh, what a choice it would be. The day everything changed continued. Margaret walked 3 blocks before she let herself stop. She found a bench at the small park where she used to bring the children when they were young. The swings moved gently in the breeze, empty now, like so much of her life suddenly felt. She sat down and finally let the tears come, but they didn't last long. Margaret had learned something in her 43 years as a nurse. Grief and anger could coexist, and sometimes anger was more useful. She pulled out her phone and made a call. Hello. This is Margaret Anderson. I need to speak with Linda Churn. Please. Yes, I'll hold. Linda Churn was the best divorce attorney in 3 counties. They'd gone to book club together for 15 years. Margaret had helped Linda's mother pass peacefully 2 years ago, sitting with the family through those final difficult nights. Margaret? Linda's voice came through, warm and concerned. What's wrong? I need your help, Margaret said simply. Robert changed the locks while I was at the hospital today. He's already got a lawyer. I need someone who actually cares about me. There was a pause. Then Linda's voice turned sharp and professional. Don't use the credit card again. Don't sign anything. Come to my office right now. We have work to do. An hour later, Margaret sat in Linda's office, a cup of tea growing cold in her hands. The house is in both your names? Linda asked, making notes. Yes. We bought it together. And you said he's moving someone else in tomorrow? That's what he said. Linda looked up, and there was fire in her eyes. Margaret, in this state, that's incredibly stupid of him. He can't just lock you out of marital property and moving another woman in before the divorce is final. She shook her head. Robert just made this very easy for me. I don't want revenge, Margaret said quietly. Then she paused. Actually, that's not true. I do want him to understand what he's done, what he's throwing away. Then let's make sure he understands, Linda said. But first, we need to get you somewhere to stay. Margaret thought of her daughter Sarah, who lived across town, of her son Daniel, of friends who would take her in without question. But something made her shake her head. I want to stay close, she said. I want to watch what happens. Next, she rented a small apartment 2 streets over. Close enough to see, far enough not to be seen. Linda worked quickly. By the next morning, Robert had been served with papers and a restraining order preventing him from moving anyone into the marital home until the divorce was settled. Margaret heard through Sarah that Robert had raged, screamed, thrown things. Diane had apparently been at the house with her suitcases when the sheriff arrived with the paperwork. She'd left in tears. "Mom, are you okay?" Sarah asked, visiting the apartment with groceries and clean clothes she'd bought. "I can't believe Dad did this." "None of us can. I'm fine, sweetheart," Margaret said, and she meant it. She felt clearer than she had in years. Over the following weeks, Margaret began to understand something. She'd been invisible in her own marriage for a long time. Robert had taken her steady presence for granted. The way you take air for granted until suddenly you can't breathe. She'd cooked his meals, managed his social calendar, remembered his relatives' birthdays, picked up his prescriptions, scheduled his doctor's appointments. She'd been the one who noticed when the furnace needed servicing, when the property taxes were due, when the insurance needed renewing. Robert, she realized, had no idea how to run his own life. The first sign came when Daniel called. "Dad asked me how to use the washing machine," he said, bewildered. "He's 69 years old, Mom. How does he not know how to wash clothes?" Then Sarah, "He wants to know where you kept the list of contractors. The toilet's leaking, and he doesn't know who to call." Margaret said nothing. She simply listened. She went back to work at the hospice. Her patients and their families welcomed her back with open arms. "We missed you, Margaret," old Mr. Patterson said, squeezing her hand with his frail fingers. "You have a gift for making hard things feel less scary. We all have that gift," Margaret told him gently. "We just have to choose to use it with kindness." But kindness, she was learning, didn't mean letting people walk over you. Kindness could be firm. It could have boundaries. It could say no. 2 months after Robert had changed the locks, Margaret received a phone call. It was Diane. "Mrs. Anderson?" The voice was young, uncertain. "This is Diane Marshall. I need to talk to you." Margaret's first instinct was to hang up, but curiosity stopped her. "I'm listening," she said. "Robert isn't," Diane hesitated. "He's not who I thought he was. He told me you were cold, distant, that the marriage had been dead for years. But his kids barely speak to him now. And he's so angry all the time. About everything. I see. I just wanted to say I'm sorry," Diane continued, her voice breaking.
I didn't know.
I didn't understand what I was participating in.
He told me you didn't care, that you'd be relieved. Margaret closed her eyes. She could hate this woman.
It would be easy.
But Diane was just another person Robert had
lied to. Thank you for telling me, Margaret said finally. I hope you find what you're really looking for, Diane.
And I hope you understand that you won't find it with someone else's husband.
She hung up gently. 3 months in, Linda called with news. Robert wants to settle.
His lawyer says he's having financial difficulties. How? Margaret asked. Apparently, maintaining 2 households is expensive.
Especially when one
of them includes a woman with expensive tastes.
And somehow he bounced 3 checks last month. Did you always handle the finances? Margaret smiled. I handled everything. The settlement was generous.
Very generous.
Margaret got the house,
half of Robert's pension, and a substantial monthly support payment.
Robert got his freedom and the expensive lessons that came with it. On the day the divorce was finalized, Margaret stood in her kitchen now, and felt something unexpected. Not triumph exactly, more like peace. She'd learned that love without respect was hollow. That kindness to others had to start with kindness to yourself. That betrayal revealed character, both in those who committed it and in those who survived it. Robert had thought her soft, manageable, defeated. He'd
been wrong. Margaret Anderson had changed too.
Just not in the way he'd expected.